Have you ever felt let down or been bitterly disappointed? I have. Today I've been thinking about someone I met on a beach one cold rainy night not so very long ago. My name is Ian Currey and this is Thinking Out Loud. Come on, let me tell you what I think. Disappointment is a horrible thing, isn't it? I've often wondered why, after all this time, I still get disappointed and feel it so deeply when expectations I have set are not met. One of the biggest disappointments, of course, is when a parent tells a child they'll do something special and then, for whatever reason, doesn't do it. Growing up, I can remember very few times when my father let me down in that kind of way. We were not a rich family at all, but somehow little things were always there for us as lovely surprises. And if Dad said he would do it, we could count on him for it to happen. As a special treat, every Friday on the way home from work, Dad would stop off at the newsagent and he'd buy one or two comics. Being the eldest, I got to choose which one I wanted to read first before passing it off to my brothers and sisters, and then waiting for the other one to do the rounds before I got my turn to read it. I'm sure Dad liked reading the comics too, sometimes. Every week there was a cliffhanger in one of the stories. It was, of course, a very clever marketing tool so that we children would pester our parents to buy the next installment for us. All week long I'd waited to read the conclusion of how the Bash Street kids were going to rescue their friend from being locked in the school building or scare their rivals into the next episode. There'd been a trick this week and the problem was really difficult to solve. We always knew who would win in the end. Life was simpler back then. And good always triumphed over evil, and the bad guys always got their just desserts. One cliffhanger in the stories that I remember included a clever idea from one of the characters to scare his rivals. It was an amazing invention. It would change everything. But then, included in next week's exciting edition, you'll have a free, amazing, magical cracker so that you too can startle your friends. Oh, what a way to end. But free in the comic? And I got to choose first? Wait, I knew exactly which one I was going to choose and knew exactly where that cracker was going to end up. It was mine for sure. The days until Friday rolled slowly by and finally it was time for Dad to arrive home from work. I waited with anticipation, standing on the front room shelf, looking out of the window, and he walked the short distance from the railway station. The comic. Had Dad remembered to buy the comics? He'd said he would. As always, there they were, and there was I making sure I got the right one, and off I went. I rushed outside to sit on the front step to read it. Out there, my brothers and sisters would take a while to find me. These days, I sometimes sit out there with a railway magazine, but not much reading gets done. I'm often too busy thinking. I turned eagerly to the page where the story would be, the amazing cracker. Ooh, but it wasn't there. Where's the cracker? It wasn't there at all. Page after page was turned. I shook the comic, stood and looked around. Nothing. Dad, the magic cracker, it's missing. Dad, it's missing. We looked everywhere to make sure it hadn't been dropped. But there were no signs of it. The newsagent by now was closed and Mr. Hodges wouldn't likely have any clue what a magic cracker was, even if the shop had been open. To put this in perspective, a magical cracker was made of a piece of thin card with a piece of paper stuck to it. It wasn't even coloured. You can colour your own magic cracker in and choose your own design. Totally disappointed, I chose the only path I knew and looked carefully at the pictures. In the comic, there was the thing laid out. Borrowing a pair of scissors and some tape, I made what looked to be right from the cereal box. I folded the device carefully and then coloured it in. I shook the cracker several times before I figured out how it was supposed to work. Then, crack! It worked. Well, it worked well enough to scare poor Sparky. I rushed inside yelling, "Dad, Dad, I made one!" to be greeted by my brother with a loud crack. The cracker had been in the other comic. Somehow, when Dad picked up the crackers must have slipped into the pages of the wrong magazine. The crackers lasted perhaps a week. Soon they would be forgotten, just as most of the storylines. That day, though, I travelled a rough path emotionally. Expectation, and even, dare I say, patience, had been dashed in what a small boy had faced. Huge disappointment. The way I overcame the disappointment was to make a magical cracker myself. Even so, the marvellous magical cracker wasn't nearly what it had been billed. I found that dealing with disappointment has often been accompanied by worry. That's a strange thing, isn't it? Will it be all right? Will what I bought my child for their birthday be the right thing? Or will they be disappointed? Will I be disappointed? Will I be a disappointment to my family, to my boss, to myself? Now, instead of disappointment, worry becomes the thing that consumes me. The joy of making a magical cracker and actually having it work is gone. Well, work enough to scare the dog, anyway. In real life, there are far bigger things to worry about than a free gift in a comic. There I was, fretting about a piece of card and paper, thinking life would never be the same again. How selfish. Not too long ago, I met a family on a beach. They'd just escaped a terrible war in their country and had run away, taking their lives in their hands to get to a new place to live. Everything they owned had gone. They had not only seen their house burned down and all their possessions destroyed or taken, but had also seen several family members killed in the process. I stood there beside this little girl, knowing that her grandmother had just died. Everything she loved and knew, her school and many of her friends, were gone forever. I'm sure if worry and disappointment were liquids, they were leaking from each of her eyes. This is who I was thinking about today. I wondered, where are they now? And how are they getting on? Were they still having struggles to survive? Had they been allowed to settle in their new country? Had disappointment, worry, and fear followed them? Did they have what they needed? I suppose, having been involved in some of these situations, even though to a very limited extent, I've become much more aware of how good life is for me. Instead of worrying about things, I've learned to think of some of the wonderful people I've met along the way and to think about how much harder life is for them. Are we worrying about the next marvelous magical cracker? Or are we intentionally deciding to reach out to someone who needs far more to experience peace and safety? This week is my birthday, and I'm going to be counting my blessings. I'm sure I could think of lots of things to worry about, but I won't be disappointed at all about things that really don't matter. It's easy to say, don't worry and don't be disappointed. but far more difficult to just not do it, isn't it? Paul has some good advice, but I'll be the first to admit I often don't take that advice. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything you can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and your minds. Peace sounds so wonderful in such a chaotic world, doesn't it? Instead of disappointment over things that are little more than card and tape, let's remember the joy of looking out for others, perhaps making sure to go out of our way to encourage someone along our life's journey. Oh, and I'll try not to bother poor Sparky with a magical cracker. Until next time, goodbye.